This dude is fucking ripped. Usually like the beefy doesn't do it for me, but he has his like tattoos. And he loves his motorcycle like a literal puppy that's his. So it's just like, okay, I can like cuddle a hard body.
So can I, girlfriend. I'm Andrea Gunning.
And I'm Ben Fetterman.
And you're listening to Dating Diaries, Questions and Confessions. So Ben, I've had Friends on the brain because, as you know, I'm a Friends super fan. And there was an epic Friends reunion.
I've been waiting a long time for this.
Very long time. One of my favorite storylines on the show was Ross and Rachel and their epic break.
I just wish we hadn't lost those 4 months. But if time was what you needed just to gain a little perspective.
We were on a break!
Coffee house?
You bet.
They were on a break.
My feeling on Ross is he can do no right. When he's in a relationship with Rachel, he's not good enough. When they're on a break and, he explores a little bit, he's completely in the wrong. Ross can never win.
The first story we will hear this week explores that exact situation.
So I'm Amelia. I live in Seattle. I was in a relationship for 8 years. We were together all through college, and he had asked for a few breaks throughout college. I feel like they were probably beneficial for him, but I was freaking out the whole time about what he was doing.
Eventually, Amelia found that she needed a break herself, so she turned inward a bit.
Like, I hadn't done that self-exploration, and I toyed with it for forever, like a year before I was really like, okay, this has to happen. And he was saying he understood, air quotes, and that he would be waiting for me when I figured it out. He said, just don't take a year.
Fair enough. Amelia had given her boyfriend the space when he asked for it, and she expected the same in return.
We were kind of doing the whole like still talking and like still seeing each other and all of that messy stuff. And one day, without getting like too far into the details of it, because I feel like I could take up 3 podcast episodes talking about this, but without getting into too much detail, he blindsided me and just ended it.
That wasn't the break she was asking for, not a permanent one. And it wasn't exactly kind.
He sent me an email basically being like, yeah, sorry, bye. It was really cold and short. And he started removing all of my friends as followers on Instagram, which I thought was really sketchy. And he was private. It turns out he was with somebody else.
And in the midst of an ugly cry, Amelia had a thought.
I was sitting at home and I was going through TikTok and I was like, all that I want is to see chapters of somebody's healing. That's all that I want, so that I can know that it's not going to feel like this for forever and I'm going to start feeling okay soon.
When Amelia didn't find it, she decided to create it and posted this video.
I've completely lost myself this past year and I wanted to document my getting better. I know that a lot of people go through this and I wish that I could see somebody's growth to know that it was going to be okay. So this is me on day 1. I think a lot of people, when they're going through breakups, they're like, nobody knows what this feels like. When really it's a very common, unifying feeling. It was beneficial for people to see, like, I would be feeling okay one day, and then the next day I would be in the pits again. And it was really good for me to be open and raw about it. And it also gave me this sense of purpose with the pain, because I've realized whenever I'm sad about anything, the most frustrating part of the sadness is feeling like I'm not using it toward anything.
Nothing hurts like that post-breakup time. Then slowly, in the midst of the hurt, she had an awakening.
I loved him more than I loved myself, to the point of like, I didn't really even love myself anymore. I was putting all of my worth on a hindsight realization. I didn't realize why I was so obsessed with making this work with him. And I like, apart from me just obviously loving him and wanting to make it work with him, it was everything that I was resting on him, giving me the love that I wanted.
And the timing wasn't the best.
I'm the single friend, and then the world shut down. Everybody is quarantined with their person, and I feel pretty alone. But again, it's just been a unique opportunity for me to just be okay with being alone.
Then, Amelia suddenly looked upon her single status as a fresh start.
It's such a weird experience, like not knowing who you are when you're coming out of a relationship, but it's also kind of a dope feeling. Like, I was super excited when I was realizing, I was like, oh my God, I kind of have a clean slate in a way.
She considered all of the things that had fallen by the wayside during the years that she was with her boyfriend.
I stopped hanging out with friends as much. I stopped acting because I was doing commercial acting. I stopped that. I just like clean slated my life when I took a break from him. And he was just the one thing that decided not to make its way back into my life. So that's what was going through my head. I just really needed to figure out who I was.
And for a moment, curiosity got the better of her.
Like about a month later, I reached back out to him and I got an anonymous message on Instagram. I have my theories about who it was, but telling me that he was with this new girl.
And she had a normal knee-jerk response.
So I went onto the apps, Tinder, Hinge, Bumble, like kind of hyped, and I hit the ground running with it because when I found out that he was with someone, I was like, I got a date, I got a revenge date, which is not a good reason to date, but I am happy that I did it, but not a good reason to start. It's like a needle in a haystack kind of situation. And when I would meet a guy that I could maybe see past the issues on their profile, they would be something else in person, you know?
Yep, I do know.
I'm falling in love with who I am for the first time, like I think ever. And that is a really, really beautiful feeling. Every time somebody starts to threaten that peace, like if I start to feel jealous or like somebody comes in just to like wreak havoc, I get really protective of my energy. So it's made me a lot more selective, which I don't think is a bad thing. I'm looking at people like, can I marry this guy? That's always my first thought. Like, I'm looking at stuff like their career and like, do they have a lot of friends in their pictures? When before I was looking at people like, are they hot? Do they look fun? Like that was my criteria because I was just trying to like throw spaghetti at a wall.
Then there's my personal favorite. What's the hairline situation?
And I wasn't really putting any importance on who they were.
All kidding aside, isn't this really about growing up and coming into your own?
So I think in that sense, I'm probably not prepared for a relationship, but I'm really loving the journey of me figuring it out. And I don't think I could have ever said that if I wasn't going through all of the stuff that I'm going through right now.
What felt like the worst thing that had ever happened to Amelia connected her to a whole new world outside and was the rebirth of who she is on the inside too.
I got blindsided, but I'm really grateful for it in the end.
This story sounds a lot like my relationship. 8 years, dated all throughout college, took multiple breaks. I mean, I have learned a lot about what Amelia was feeling through not ditching my relationship.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you stay, if you do the work, you do breaks and you get back together, yeah, it's a level of starting a new relationship and getting very clear about what you want and what you learned out of the break. I mean, everything she described about what he wanted, what she wanted, we went through that. I mean, here's the thing. When I met my wife freshman year in college, I could tell right away, this is the person I wanted to be with. And that's a very scary feeling at a young age.
Yeah.
There are other things you want to learn and experience and figure out. But also, when you meet someone that you really care about, you kind of know.
2 questions though.
Yeah.
Did you know when you were taking that break that there was a chance that that relationship was done forever?
I absolutely knew that there was a chance that it could be done forever. You're taking that risk. You have to. There are 2 people to a relationship. I mean, Amelia learned that. Like, when he said, I'm going to break up with you, I'm done. Yeah, that's really blindsiding. But she was taking space to figure it out, and there's a risk when you decide to take space.
Do breaks work if there's like a defined period of time? Like, did you and your wife just break up?
We broke up. So there is a difference.
Right.
There's the difference between a breakup and a break.
I mean, we said it before, like, we both believe in a reset.
Yes.
But I think when you need to take meaningful time for yourself, you need to call it and be prepared that that relationship's over.
I agree with that. Because if you have strings attached on a quote unquote break, are you really giving yourself a chance to learn more about yourself?
Right. Like there's still that safety net.
Right.
And I think that takes guts to walk away from something that you've built 8 years on. When I was watching her TikTok, she was just day in, 2 days in, she was crying. And the sadness that just like radiated from this video. Like I've been there. You don't know the next time you're going to feel okay. You don't know the next time you're going to laugh. You just don't know. It is such a tough feeling. It's been a few years since I felt that way, but I would have loved to know that I wasn't alone and be reminded that that feeling that you're going through isn't permanent. It may be a slow burn and a really slow climb, but eventually it does get better. My favorite quote from Barack Obama, progress is not a straight line.
I know a lot of sports terms. One that you taught me from your volleyball days was the term use it. The point of it is that nothing is perfect on the playing field. That's true in sports, it's true in life, it's true in your dating life. Don't let adversity take you down further. Use it as motivation and use it for you, not against you.
Yeah, when I broke up with my ex and moved out of his house, you just kept reminding me to write it all down, every feeling. I really took that to heart.
I was telling you to write, to use that grief. Use it to learn, to explore for yourself, to empower you, not to take you down. And so I see that in Amelia, right? She's using TikTok as a platform to express what she's feeling. Look at where she is now in learning more about herself and being good with it.
I almost forgot to do this, which is kind of the goal, I guess. 4 months ago today, I got my ass handed to me. And I'm grateful that I can laugh about it now, but I really didn't think I was gonna bounce back from that breakup.
It feels like that process allowed her to understand more of who she is, which is going to set herself up to not only loving herself more, but then being able to show up as herself in her next relationship.
I'm Mika, and I am a fresh 35-year-old in New York. I'm a freelance content strategist and communications consultant.
For a young woman, Mika has seen a lot.
When I was abroad in Marrakesh, I was assaulted in a really violent way. It was a country where women really did not enjoy very many rights, but it still had a really big tourist industry. So I had experienced this as an American woman firsthand from the time that I was like bleeding, almost bleeding to death. And my sister and I were screaming our heads off. And then we were sitting in that city's police station and they had just dismissed us. And it was only like this woman who was on holiday there from London who saved us. It turned out she was a homicide detective because she was trained, she heard all of the commotion and followed like the trail of blood to the police station. So then we went to the hospital and it was clear that all of the women nurses really had no say in anything. And there was a hierarchy there.
It really didn't feel like she had any safe place.
At the same time, I was living in Spain at that time, and my boss was sexually harassing me. So those two compacted traumas really put me in a bad way.
But Mika, she was determined to find a way through.
I was able to get to a point where I'm like, okay, well, I can't be just mad at 50% of the population. I need to make this healthier for myself.
So she found a dating app that felt safe.
I'll start off with Field, which is an app that used to be called Thrinder until they got sued by Tinder, but it was mostly to find threesomes. But the reason why I chose this app to go on in particular 2 years ago is because the kink and the polyamory community are really big on communication and consent in the way that a lot of other apps are vague and gray on it. It's very community driven, and it's very sex positive. I had gone through a lot of trauma, and I needed to get back out there and be in my body and be held by, like, spiritually, emotionally, mentally held by the other person on the other end in a certain kind way. So Field has really delivered on that, and I've met some really wonderful people. But like any other dating app, you start to get kind of fatigue and ambivalence on it.
In that way, it's like any other dating app. She's on, then she's off.
I have like deleted the app 500 times. So I was like, finally like, okay, finito. I'm going to put this away for a bit and really focus on myself. So then this guy hit me up.
Happens every time.
So a little background on him. On his bio, it said like 2 truths and a lie. One truth was that he was a monk, which is customary for Thai Buddhist men. Another truth was that he was once a stripper. And the lie was like, I can lift up a smart car, which I thought that was the truth because this dude is fucking ripped.
So Mika bit.
Okay, I can like cuddle a hard body. He has a lot of baggage about dating because he was once a sex worker, like an escort, because dancing is adjacent to sex work. You get propositioned. So, I mean, he gave that up a while ago. And he's like, it's exploitative. It paid off in the long run.
No judgment from this end. But from here on, we'll call this guy Magic Mike.
So you can have the part of you that's like, wants to have these threesomes, wants to go to these sex parties, do all of these things. Great. You have another part of you that like wants connection and like wants something more stable. Both sides of that can exist in you, but you can't confuse it. That's where you run into trouble. For about a week, we sent each other every day long ass messages about everything, like childhood trauma, therapy, racism, our backgrounds, our political views, everything, paragraphs. And like it got to the point where we would leave each other voice messages. It's like, okay.
With such a strong connection, Mika worried that she could catch feelings hard. So she decided to keep things platonic. Then the convo went there.
And he's like, well, I am really hypersexual and this app is really good for that.
And she had a change of heart.
So then I was just like, hey, Magic Mike, my birthday is on Tuesday and I would like some birthday dick. And he was like 100% on board with that. I should mention that he is fully vaccinated, which is such a fucking flex.
Hell yeah.
So then we're talking every day, whatever. And Thursday comes along. That's when our date was. And I meet him at a bar near his place. So we were in there like one of the only few people. We had a drink and I'm like, what are you thinking? Should we have another one? And he's like, no, I need to check on my puppy. So I was like, okay, I'd like to meet your puppy. He's like, oh, okay. And I had a bottle of champagne that my best friend had mailed me for my birthday. So he's like, oh, I got my champagne here. He's like, oh, great. So we went to his place and I met the dog. Then we started talking, and the entire evening we were talking like really, really deep things. But like being the horny drunk asshole that I am, I was just like, he's like not touching me or making any moves. And I'm like, what the fuck is happening? But on the other hand, I'm also enjoying, this conversation. I told him all about like my tumultuous upbringing, like super Catholic, culty. And he like told me about, sex work and his own kind of views in spirituality. And he was like, I really envy your spirituality, that sort of deepness.
He's loving her intellect and her soul, and she loves that he loves that. But she's also waiting for him to make a move. And it's clearly not happening. This birthday dick is pretty flaccid.
He's not touching me, you know. I was trying to look for signs of life over there. Then he started yawning. And then, I'm getting my stuff together to head out. And then I was just like, would it be too forward if I asked you to kiss me? And he's like, no, not at all. So then we made out a little bit. And I get into my lift.
A yawn, a kiss, and then out. It wasn't exactly what Mika had imagined.
And then, of course, as I'm sitting there on my way home, drunk, all of my insecurities about rejection and desirability came through like a fucking freight train, just careening into the evening. Then there's this inner voice of what if he finds you gross? So I sent him a text message.
Ugh, damn, girl. No, call me. Call me first.
I was like, geez, so much for being hypersexual. And then I deleted his phone number so I couldn't take it back. And then passed the fuck out.
Yikes.
The next morning, I'm hungover in this hangover spiral. And I told my sister what happened. She's like, dude, you're such an asshole. What is that? Can you imagine if a dude said that to you? You're allowed to feel disappointed, but you are not entitled to sex. She's like, you need to apologize. So I found his number because nothing goes away in the cloud. So then I texted him the next morning. I'm sorry. And my drunk, sassy self sent you that thing. I'm going to try to do better moving forward. I have impulse control issues, I think. I actually sent him a good voice message, which was like, hey, I feel like I need to explain myself. When I came home that night, I felt a little bit rejected and I took it out on you and I regret doing it. I'm sorry again.
Magic Mike was accepting of Mika's apology and told her straight up how he felt.
He said, I was taken aback since it seemed like I could feel safe in not sleeping together. And the message came off as a reverse slut shaming, shaming to not have sex, which I thought was odd. In the moment, most of our conversations were super deep in the weeds, which was awesome, but not sexual. So it would have felt forced if we just went for it.
Mika owned it, then broke it down.
Men in our society are expected to perform and to be sex machines. There's never a narrative that they want to take it slow or that they are ambivalent about it. And, as a former sex worker, I'm making an assumption here, but he probably was objectified all the time. I think both of us are coming out of these traumatic, exploitative experiences that are tangential to our sexuality. I need external validation. I know where that stems from. I know the pathology of it. I felt rejected. Sometimes sex is a good, convenient way to hide behind it, but that's also how I get disappointed. It's messy. It's really messy.
I just want to start with, expressing the strength and admiration I have for Mika sharing that story. There is a lot of trauma and strings that come attached with an experience like that.
It takes a tremendous amount of time to heal. On one side, Mika is thinking, okay, I'm attracted to men, but my trauma, my assault, the harassment has been dealt by men. So I can see how it's easy to breed resentment and not trust. How do you reconcile those two things? So she meets Magic Mike. I've seen a picture of this guy. He's very, very beautiful. They were exploring the idea of a sexual relationship. Then she realizes there's a lot of emotional meat on this bone here. We have a deeper connection. If I sleep with him, it'll get tangled for me. So we should probably be friends.
I'm catching feels hearing how much they're communicating with one another. So I find this confusing about what the end game is.
I think that it was scaring Mika with how deep their connection was, that if she did sleep with him, it couldn't just be casual. And she knew that he was just looking for something casual, so that's why she was like, this shouldn't be a sexual relationship. Then she was a bit of a horn dog around her birthday and wanted to get laid. Can't blame the girl for it. She decided, I'm sexually attracted to this guy. And she straight up said, would you be up for some birthday sex? And he said yes.
He said yes to birthday sex and then decided maybe he's just not that into her. I mean, that's what it feels like, right?
I mean, I kept asking if she was reading the room.
But if he's a people pleaser, he's not going to say no if she asks because he's going to upset her on her birthday, and he doesn't want to do that. It's a tough one. I mean, that it's very muddled. It's very confusing. What everyone's intentions weren't clear to me. I think the fatal mistake here was he said, great, or sure, or let's head back. If he had no intention of sleeping with her that night, that was his moment. Because once she steps through that threshold, now there's even further of an expectation because there's a bed in the scenario.
The whole time she's just sitting there waiting for him to make a move.
He caught the yawns.
That is torture. I'm just trying to figure out what is going on in this dude's head.
Whether he wasn't into her or even though he said he wanted to have sex, he wasn't ready to take where they were in their quote-unquote relationship to that level, he couldn't adequately say what he needed from her. And I think Mika would have received it. She seems
evolved.
Yeah, but he never gave her the opportunity to understand where he was in all of this.
Right. But let's talk about expectations, because I think a lot of experiences, especially with online dating, you build up expectations in your head. In this case, expectations were explicitly laid out ahead of time.
They were.
That's why this one is such a head scratcher.
But he has every right to change his mind, but he needs to express it. That was the miss here. He didn't express it.
I mean, when he explained himself, he said, we were just having really heavy conversations about religion and life and family. It didn't feel right to make a move. And I call bullshit on that. Because if a guy is interested, it doesn't matter how deep the conversation, he's still making that move. I hear Mika's point that society expects men to be hypersexual, but I've been deep in convo with guys and it's never stopped them from making a move. What do you think?
It gets back to my two theories here. People pleaser, that's an excuse to make her feel good about herself and not make her feel like he has, or not say, I'm just not that into you, in an avoidance to hurt her. And two, he's just not that into her.
Look, she definitely screwed up, but I think it's kind of screwed up on his part to lead her on the way that he did. If he wasn't into her, he probably should have spoken up a little bit, because she's literally toting a champagne bottle, following him to his house, thinking that they're going to drink it and bone it out.
This is where he's at fault. There's no way he didn't realize what her expectations were that night.
Exactly.
And that's the problem.
She took on a lot of responsibility for how the communication went down. And I think that she was so embarrassed and so consumed by how she derailed things that she wasn't able to step back and say, I was actually kind of led on here, even down to the last kiss.
I think he saw the kiss as an out. The kiss was okay, I can give a kiss. All right, we move along.
I don't know. God, though, when she was talking about waking up and having that reckoning of what the hell did I text this person? It's the worst feeling ever.
Whew, Dre, we covered a lot this week. Trauma bleeding into relationships, fresh starts, drunk texts.
We're here for all of it, so reach out to us at datingdiariespod@gmail.com. That's datingdiariespod@gmail.com. And follow us on social at datingdiariesqc. Thanks for being part of our community. Until next week, stay safe out there, guys. This podcast is hosted and executive produced by me, Andrea Gunning. Executive produced by Nancy Glass, Ben Fetterman, and Carrie Hartman. Produced by Julie Clark. Associate producers include Megan Paisley and Kristen Malcurie. Edited by Mac Daggett and Matt Delvecchio. Special thanks to Natalie Thomas. Music by Mybe Music. Some names have been changed to protect privacy.